in the time I started writing whatever I could write, I do like to say as a caveat, and we can discuss it more, but this is not a pandemic album. I've heard the pandemic albums. It's not, but it was born from it.
Hi, how are you?
I'm so good. I'm happy to be here with you.
I'm happy you're here. I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, of course.
Amazing. Well, I'm Adam, and this podcast is about you and your journey in music. We'll talk about the new song, and I believe you have an album coming out as well.
I do. March 10th.
Awesome. So we can talk about that as well, if that's cool.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. So first off, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Manhattan, in New York City.
Wow.
Yeah. We were in Washington Heights till I was like a young kid. I think we moved out of Washington Heights up to a town called Hastings-on-Hudson, also in New York. It's a small suburb, when I was about 6 or 7 and stayed there. It's about 40 minutes outside the city.
Okay, so you grew up in the not actually in the city.
No.
Okay. That's cool though. Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, being that close to the city, I'm sure it was pretty accessible.
Yes. And my dad is he's born and raised in Washington Heights, and so he was never, and I think still lovingly is never really ready to let the city go, so we spent quite a bit of time there.
Okay, that's cool. So like, were you able to get out there? Like, and I always find it fascinating, people that grow up or like around the city. I lived in San Francisco for a handful of years, but that was way after I was older. But having access like that, like in high school and stuff, were you able to just hop on a train or something and get out there?
Yes, incredibly accessible town. Hastings-on-Hudson is really amazing for that. So it's just a train line down, or it's 15 minutes from the top of the one subway. So a huge part of my childhood and really close to my music in the teen years were spent in Manhattan and the Lower East Side specifically.
Wow, that's awesome. Do you come from a musical household?
Yeah, neither of my parents play instruments. My dad plays guitar. But neither of my parents are in the musical profession.
Okay.
But there was lots of music in my house growing up, yes.
And what about getting into it? Like, were you putting piano lessons there or something early on, or did your dad teach you how to play guitar?
No, I remember my grandmother lives in Washington Heights in Manhattan, and she had a piano in her apartment that just hadn't been used. It was just like collecting dust. And apparently, I remember just the feeling of the keys beneath my fingers the first time I played it, and my whole body just settled. It was very clear. And apparently, I was like a very hyperactive kid, still am kind of a hyperactive adult. And the lore is that my mom said that I immediately relaxed in a way where she said, well, whatever that is, we must get her one.
That calms her down. There we go. I need to find my son something like that.
Yeah, and for a while we had a next door neighbor named this elderly couple named Tom and Kathy, and they had a piano, so they became my best friends until my parents finally, their friend in the village helped them, like an opera singer was getting rid of her piano, so then I got one. And mostly was self-taught through childhood. I ended up with a teacher. I wasn't great at lessons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which most creatives aren't, right? It's like, I don't want to sit here and learn how to do scales or play proper. I just want to play what I want to play.
A little bit. As it happens, I need structure and I struggle with structure.
Sure. Well, that must have been a pretty big day, right? Getting that piano.
Well, actually, it's a pretty magical, yes. So we had the sort of, they got the opera singer's piano, and that was the holdover, right? Like, let's see if she's serious about this. And if she is, we'll talk about a real piano. And my dad, I remember, it's one of my most magical memories. And now I'm like a Yamaha artist, and I tell them all the time that I remember the day that my dad got the Yamaha. It was a surprise. I remember the sheet. It was covered in a floral sheet. Like, I remember, I still have it. It's in my house now. I moved it to Los Angeles with me, this Yamaha.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
Magical moment of my life.
That's cool. So it's actual real, it's not a keyboard, it's piano.
No, it's an upright piano. So they got me this upright, and the key for them was that it had a damper pedal. So my two brothers wouldn't be too annoyed that I was on the piano all the time.
Oh, okay.
And
That's
wildly, it
awesome.
contributed quite a bit to my sound, that damper pedal, because I grew up playing on a damper. So you can hear on this album that I was going for that sound actually in recording.
Really
Yeah.
nice. What about writing music? And was that something that kind of came naturally to you? Were you doing that early on?
No, actually, I knew from when I was 8 years old onwards, okay, I want to be a singer. It was, I'm lucky in that. As soon as I did it, it was very clear. I liked that. Let's do that.
Real quick, sorry to cut you off, but I'm curious. Like, was there like something that you did or a player
Oh yeah,
performance to know
there
at 8?
was,
Like at 8, there must have been something.
there was indeed, Adam. I was in a play called
Okay.
Hero. I played my little known, we each got to pick our hero. So I picked Lucy Stone, who's like a little known feminist. She famously fought for the right for women to keep their name during marriage. That was my hero at 8.
That's pretty progressive. Wow.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of friends, but I was a fun kid.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I played Lucy Stone, and Talia/Lucy Stone had a solo, and a similar feeling. I try to hold on to them when I'm in too much stress in the music business. I try to hold on to these memories. So there's the Yamaha, right? And this is another one where I remember singing, because we had just practiced, right? We had never had a performance, and the whole school was there and everyone's parents. And I remember that solo as it was like I was transported, and I was like, that's it. This is what I'm doing.
Wow. I always find that is so interesting when people's like early on performances are like, the school play or a talent show. I guess it's just comes with the amount of accessibility to performing out, but like you're in front of everybody, and people you're going to go to school with for the next X amount of years. So if you screw up, like, that's really putting it on the line.
Yeah, you're not going to live that one down.
Right. And then like, the talent show, when every one of my high school kids was, 8 is a bit young, but you know what I mean? Like when you hear those stories, I always find that funny. Instead of like a coffee shop to 20 people you'll never probably ever run into ever again.
No, this was a small town with the whole town in the audience. And there were other moments where it didn't go so well, but that first one, magic.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was gonna say, enough to have you it's imprinted in your mind. Like, okay, at 8, I remember the specific moment, and that's why I decided to pursue music.
Yes.
So back to the songwriting. Like, when did you start writing songs?
Yeah. So then I went to I got into conservatory, so I went to the New School for Jazz and Contemporary Music.
Oh, cool.
Still, so in Manhattan on the Lower East Side, just what I wanted. And I was singing, but to be honest, I had gone to that school and I ended up working at Blue Note Records, and I'm, married to a jazz singer. I love jazz, but at the time I had gone to the school not for a deep love of jazz, just because I wanted to sing, but I didn't want to go to classical conservatory. So that seemed like the right choice. And I wasn't thriving because I'm not a good jazz singer. Jazz is like an incredible, Black American art form that I have deep love and respect for. And I just wasn't doing well. And it wasn't, the music that was speaking to me. But the beautiful thing about the New School for Jazz and Contemporary Music at the time was that they had a policy where once you had left what they called proficiency, you had 9 lessons at a very competitive rate with whoever you wanted. So you could just anyone in New York City who would say yes, they would pay for it. So,
geez, that's cool.
Pretty cool policy. I don't know if they still have it, but people would use it for wild stuff.
Who's the most wild person you can remember?
The wildest one I remember at jazz school was that a girl called an image consultant, which is actually very smart. But we all thought it was really silly. So she, people used it for Alexander technique or whatever they want. So I got the wild idea to call just my favorite singer, who at the time her name is Sasha Dobson. And she's a songwriter. And we ended up just becoming very good friends. All 9 of those lessons were like a hang.
That's cool. I mean, to have somebody you admire actually be cool and
Yes.
become a
Unheard.
friend. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and she is an amazing songwriter, and so she had sort of shifted me. I don't know, again, that I was intending to go into songwriting, but she moved me into that space. And then the real turning point, since you asked, was that on my second run of being able to choose, there was a singer named Becca Stevens, who at the time was, to me, like the jewel of New York. And I still feel this way. She's now like my best friend, and we have a Grammy nomination together.
I was gonna say, actually, I've interviewed Becca before. She's really awesome. Yeah, she's
That's
her
my
husband
good
also
friend.
played on that record, right? He's like a really her husband, right? Isn't he in a
Nathan.
big? Yeah, he's
Yeah,
in what are they called? I can't remember.
Ataka.
Yes, there.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Go
Yes.
ahead.
So Becca's my best friend, but at the time I just worshiped her. Like
Okay.
I would have anything she wanted. And so I was her first student, actually. So I called her and asked if because she had gone to the new school. She had graduated right before I got there. So I asked her if she taught, and she said no, but I'll do it. And I remember I had started to write songs, but very tentatively. And I remember the first time I played it for her, I had her turn off all the lights, look at the wall, close your eyes, and played her this first song. And I said something which I often say, which is, this is either terrible or great. I have no idea. And she was it is a very good song, that first song, and she really loved it. And then then we moved into songwriting teaching. And not just that, but really a mentoring in the beginning that I am unbelievably fortunate to have had. And now she's just my best friend, and we sang each other down the aisles and stuff.
Oh, really? That's
Mhm.
cool. That is really cool. So from that session, obviously not your best friends with her. Not to skip ahead, but I'm just curious now. So you helped, or you worked with her on the song that has the Grammy nomination.
Yes. Oh, well, her first. You're right. She has a second one with Nathan. Yeah. So
Yeah.
her first
Oh,
Grammy
so
nom-
she had one prior to the one that I'm thinking of.
Yes. The one that I
Okay.
worked with Becca on is called Slow Burn. But yeah, at some point we shifted out of, it went from like mentor mentee to sort of friends to best friends inseparable. And then I moved to LA the first time. Actually, this is my second time in LA. And I came out here for songwriting at that point. Did just 2 years intensive of writing for lots of people and in really like very pop context. And one of the things in LA is that if you don't finish a song in the writing session that day, it's more or less a failure. It's just you're not gonna revisit it. It seems like that's been my experience.
Oh, really? I haven't heard
Yes.
anyone say that. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
so I got in the habit, at least in the pop world, I got in the habit of finishing a song on site.
Yeah, no matter what, we're getting
Yeah,
this done.
because I was trying to maximize my time. And so when I got home, I moved back to New York because I lived on the Lower East Side, and I had the same apartment from 19 to 31, and my husband Jose was still there. And I went to go visit Becca, and she was very stressed about this next album that was coming, and that the songs weren't quite there. And I said, good news, I now write songs very quickly. I can help, we can finish this. And so that was one of 3 that ended up on the album.
Wow. And then that was
Yeah.
the one that got nominated for the Grammy as well.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. It was
wow.
it felt like just a stunning accident. Neither of us knew we were even in the running for it.
Oh, is that right? And then you just
Yes.
get a phone call? Hey, just so you know.
Do you want to know, Adam? Here's
Yes,
what
I do.
happened. So COVID hits, right? Wrecks my whole life. I'm sitting with my husband. We are about to move to Amsterdam, and we're actually at my parents' house. We had like 3 months in between, and we were like, whatever. And we're at my parents' house. So, not my highest point in my life.
But you're gonna move to Amsterdam? That was the plan.
That was not the plan, but
Oh.
that's what we decided. That was our us adapting to the chaos of COVID.
Oh, so COVID was already going when you wanted to move, or when the decision to move came.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
COVID
Okay.
caused it.
Okay, so I thought COVID spoiled it. Go ahead.
Oh, no. COVID spoiled a lot of things.
Yeah.
But we had been living in Washington Heights. We were 2 blocks from my grandmother. Everything was great. COVID wrecked our life, but then, you know, I'm fast on my feet. So I said, okay, we'll go move to Amsterdam. Everything will be fine. But even so, it was still a very depressing part of my life. We didn't have our visa yet. We're at my parents' house in my living room, in their TV room, right? And this was 2020 was like the big year for our record label. So there were 2 albums that I was certain were going to be nominated for Grammys. José James, he had an album called No Beginning, No End 2, and Ben Williams had an album called I Am a Man. I was like, great. We have these R&B categories on lock. So we watched it live. And we're watching, and Janae Aiko gets up, and it's on the television, and she reads the category, and then she says it, and I very quietly said, wait, that's my name. And then I screamed, wait, that's my name. And we looked, and it was my name and Becca's name. And we were nominated for a Grammy.
Oh my God. You weren't even watching it thinking that was going to be the case.
Not at all. I legitimately, yeah, wild. And honestly, probably like the worst month of my life that month before that. A moment where I really thought maybe it's time to sort of hang this up, you know. And Becca was feeling similarly. So, and I called her, and she also didn't know. So I actually broke the news to her.
Wow. Whoa. Yeah. That's so cool. What a crazy story.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So then that happens, and well, at that point, do you just say we're not moving to Amsterdam now, or like,
no?
Like, what do you do?
The world was still shut down at that point. You know, to answer your question, I took it as a very clear indication. Okay, I'm in the right place. Mm-hmm. You know, it was a beautiful moment for me. You know, as a woman in the industry, with the imposter syndrome that you carry, and also as somebody who I am a good songwriter, and I'm also married to someone I write for a lot. So there's a lot of bad industry stuff where people will indicate that maybe, you know, I'm not that involved or something. And so the way that I experienced that Grammy was that Grammy nomination was, okay, this is something that nobody can mess with. It was a beautiful moment for me to sort of settle and say, as much controversy, and rightfully perhaps, as there is around the Grammys, it is still a moment where I can say, okay, that's mine. It's mine for life. No one can take it. Okay. That's
like the ultimate, right? I mean, it's like the Super Bowl of music. I mean, that's so amazing. Talk about a validating experience to have. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, okay, so you had been songwriting, like, tell me, like, do you like to get from the New York to LA and to be in these songwriting sessions and back and forth, like, did you have music out? Like, what took you to Los Angeles? Did you finish up at the new school and want to pursue songwriting? I mean, we got to kind of where you met Becca, and that was while you're still in school.
This is common for my ADHD life. So
no, I have ADHD as well. So I just try to do as best I can to go back and remember what the hell.
Well done. What happened was, okay, so yes, I graduated the new school and I immediately got hired to Blue Note Records. And I worked there full time. I actually worked there while I was in school because I don't like to sleep. And then I got hired there. I was touring under my own name, under Taali, and I had an album out that Becca had helped me put out of my own songs. So those were my first songs. But in that time, I had a vocal injury and was sort of struggling. And I pulled back a bit. And then I got my first actual writing for someone else experience was that Jose, at the time we were not involved, but I was just working for him. He was on Blue Note Records, singer named José James. He invited me to come and potentially write, because he had been kind of watching. I had a session called the Orchard Sessions, and he had been kind of watching and seeing me live. And I asked if I could bring Becca actually to sing on that album. And he said yes. So I brought Becca, came in, and I wrote 2 songs. And that was another very key moment in my career where I remember saying, okay, this I love. I never would have thought to write for another artist, but I loved it. So I wrote 2 songs on that album. And then a couple months later, I got the tour to tour the world with him on While You Were Sleeping.
Wow.
Singing background. Yeah. So that was, that was a year and a half. It was a big tour, something like 70 cities. Yeah, all over the world. And that sort of broke my life open. It leaving the States and even leaving New York was not something I had intended to do. And it shifted my whole perspective of what was possible. So then I got home but actually then sad things happened where I blew out my voice again.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, had a surgery, couldn't talk. And when I couldn't talk, that was when I moved back to Los Angeles. Not moved, but I kind of came here by accident, just like, all right, I guess if I can't talk, let me just write songs for other people. And did that while I heal my voice up from 2017 to 2018.
That must have been scary to get this. I mean, I've had I've had 4 cervical spine surgeries, but to have your vocal like that would freak me out knowing that, like, I mean, well,
Harrowing.
yeah, like what happens if it doesn't sound like, there's just so many things that would go through my mind. You just have
Yeah,
to,
and
not
it
much you
was,
can do about it, I guess.
yeah, I had these issues for years. It was sort of a gauntlet moment, where after that, it was a beautiful moment. It was horrendous and traumatizing, but
Mhm.
beautiful in that at the end of it, you ask yourself, what am I doing? Do I desperately need to sing? Like, do I need it that bad? And the answer was a resounding yes.
Yeah.
So after the surgery, I cut out all the behaviors that were leading to problems and, reformatted my whole life.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, like I said, I would be so, obviously you were the same, just be so worried about what is this gonna do? Am I gonna be able to sing? Am I gonna be able to speak? Like, yeah, that's,
Yeah, speak. Exactly. Can I even speak? And it took a while. My healing took a year. It took way too long. Everybody was very concerned.
yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're all right, and I'm glad you're able to sing. That's, okay. So then during that time, you were just writing with other people and for other people?
Yeah, the big album that I wrote, Jose, that was when I really jumped into writing because Jose had an album called Love in a Time of Madness. So I came out to LA and wrote on pretty much all those sessions. I have 6 songs on that album. I met a singer named Mali Music, who's an incredible gospel singer, and we really hit it off and wrote a lot together. And then right after that album came out, I came out here to write with a singer named Jarena DeMarco, and really moved into that sort of pop world for the year and a half that I was here.
Wow. I mean, you've put a lot of records out. I mean, you said 2017, 2018. From there to now, you've have a lot of songs.
I do, yeah. Well, what happened was, thank you. What happened was I had written, I had just a cachet of songs that, probably 100 to 200. And one of them, the stuff that was coming out, there was one that was way too personal. It was called Hear You Now. And it was about trauma. It was right around when the Weinstein
Oh,
story.
sure.
Yeah. And it was about my own experiences. And the idea of giving it to another singer was causing me to have heart palpitations in the bad way. So I
Just
just,
the idea of giving the song up?
yeah, the idea of somebody else singing it, normally that's a wonderful feeling. You
Yeah.
just love hearing someone. I have a song called To Be With You that I wrote with Mali Music, and I love hearing people cover it and sing. I love hearing that. But this one, I couldn't bear the idea of someone else singing about what was directly my own trauma and experience.
Sure.
And so from that, Taali, which is my artist name, that's
Mhm.
where Taali was born, where it ended up very quickly. I had an entire album of work there that we put out.
Oh, wow. Okay. And that's where most of your stars out?
No, that's called I Am Here, actually.
I'm Here.
When you're the record label, you can put out a lot of things. Yeah, that one came out in
I see it now. Sorry.
Yeah. That's a
2019.
yes. So that was my debut album. And yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So no, you knew that song had to be yours, and that's when the project kind of was born.
Yes.
Got you.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
was working with a producer at the time, named José who's amazing. And I had also moved into production, so we co-produced that album together, and wrote almost all the songs together. And that album came out, and that was my first. And then the next two that you're referencing were EPs, where most of your stars are.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I saw it, and it was an acoustic version. I didn't realize that when I looked at it. I'm like, oh wait, okay, that's definitely not the right one. When did you start your record label?
Rainbow Blonde was started in 2018, so we are 5 years old.
Wow,
like
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we started it in 2018. So José James, who's my creative partner and also I'm his biggest fan, he got his first 2 albums back from a label called Brownswood.
Mhm.
And at the time he just needed you need something to put music out under. You can't just have it out. So we started this label called Rainbow Blonde. And when I had those Taali songs that you and I were just discussing, Jose wanted to shop them because there are 2 specifically, one called Here You Now and one called Los Angeles, that are, kind of bangers.
Mhm.
And he wanted to shop them to labels. And I couldn't bear the idea of sitting in a room with a bunch of apathetic dudes trying to validate why my songs about my trauma were worth listening to. It made me very sad. So I told him that I thought we should put it out on Rainbow Blonde. And he said that Rainbow Blonde was way too small and that these songs deserved a bigger home. And I said, no, I think what we should do is make Rainbow Blonde a bigger place. So I Am Here was our first original LP that we released. And then we started, signing other people and bringing on the world that I was dreaming of.
That's incredible. That must be so cool to watch that kind of unfold. I mean,
It is.
to have it as like your first album, and then it's like now you have other artists, and you've been going on for 5 years now.
Adam, it is as good as it gets. It is my favorite thing I've ever done. I really, really love it.
That's so cool. And your new album will be out on the label.
Yeah, Rainbow Blonde, yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me about the new one. You just released a song.
Yes.
Yeah, It Comes For You.
Yeah, so the new album is self-titled. So it's called Taali.
Okay.
Lowercase, because that's how I sign my name.
Oh, lowercase t?
Yeah, it's really confusing people. But it's on purpose. Taali is, so it's self-titled. These songs, again, what a joy to be the record label. That's how an album like this comes to fruition, because there was so much time that any other record label that wasn't us would have dropped me so fast. But I started writing it in 2020 in our home in Washington Heights. At the time, it was just going to be my second album. I was calling it What Are You Afraid Of? Wildly.
This is before the pandemic?
Yeah.
They're like, we'll show you.
Exactly. Yes. So I started writing, and then obviously the pandemic hit, and it hit in a really wild place for us, where Rainbow Blonde had just put in so much money and energy into these 2 albums. Jose's and Ben Williams, both of those artists had left major labels for our label, so it was a big deal. Ben left Concord and Jose left Blue Note, and these albums were huge, and they came out in February and March of 2020. And so everything was just imploding around me. I had an EP that came out in May that was imploding around me. And then we got sick, actually. Jose and I both got COVID early. We came back from Japan in February, and we had COVID in March of 2020.
Oh, wow.
and it was bad. So we had a fever for 51 days. And yeah, we were really sick. And at the end of it,
that's like unheard of. 51 days.
I don't recommend it.
Oh my gosh.
Brutal. It brutal. You know,
I had
and
to say the least. Oh my gosh. Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
more or less 2 months of just fever and brain fog and short, all of the things that now we know about. So it got very bad. And also our neighborhood, Washington Heights, was a huge center of death. We were just surrounded by death.
Yeah. You were in the worst of it in New York itself.
Yeah. And I think it was the third most deaths of any neighborhood in all of New York, second only.
Oh, wow. The
a
neighborhood.
lot of elders.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it was just sirens all the time. You would just see people die literally on the way to the ambulance. And it was really heavy. And so in the time I started writing whatever I could write, I do like to say as a caveat, and we can discuss it more, but this is not a pandemic album. I've heard the pandemic albums. It's not, but it was born from it.
Mhm.
So I ended up writing a bunch of demos, kept writing those demos all the way through us moving to Amsterdam. And then a year later, about March of 2021, Jose and I sat down and I had 300 songs.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so we made I worked at Blue Note Records and now I am our main label employee at Rainbow Blonde. So I made a deranged spreadsheet, just really organized. And we categoried all of those down to about 50 that I then started to really work into this album. And as we went, it became clear that it had to be self-titled because it was so personal. I felt like I really discovered the quieter, clearer me through that process.
Wow. To have all those songs, like, how do you, to narrow it down, like that must have taken forever, right?
Yeah.
Like really decide. How many made the album? 15 so?
11 and 2
11.
2 interludes. Yeah.
So 11 make the record and you have 300 plus?
Yes. And that's from about 1,200 voice memos. 300 of them were songs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Or, some of them weren't quite songs, but they were like a really compelling line. Like It Comes For You actually was just a synth line that was so compelling that we knew we had to build a song out of it. So not all of them were full songs, but all of them were viable ideas. I would say those 200 that we then distilled down to 50, that we then distilled down to 20, that we then really got down to the key ones.
Wow. To have that many songs and then to finally are you looking for some sort of not storyline, but make it so it kind of like weaves into like a full album? I guess if I was going to an album, there's kind of has to be like this overline, that makes the full project, like a cohesive sound. Or was that part of like the sifting through, or were they all pretty much able to sonically and like make it into, you know what I mean? Like,
I do. And it's a really good question. And to be honest, yes, I don't know that I realized it as I was pressing the big red button on the voice memo each time to record, but there was a through sonic change or return, I might say, to the first kind of songs I wrote with Becca in a new
wow.
2009.
Interesting.
Because I Am Here, my debut album, is pop. It's pop. It's we programmed in all the instruments. There's not one live instrument on it. And then the next 2 EPs were reaction EPs from me touring I Am Here and disliking it. I missed live instruments.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was hearing was a piano-centric sound. I was hearing songs that weren't sort of tethered to pop song forms as much as the very rigidly tethered I Am Here. I was hearing imperfection and humanity in music and feeling it myself. Those were the things I was searching for. And then as far as building out a story, we generally, when I'm doing an album, this one really follows a story, like start to finish. The first song's called Did We Die? And the last song is called Did We Survive? Like it's very story based. But I generally try, I haven't yet, maybe I will in the future, but I generally try to let the album tell me where I'm headed. I didn't have an idea necessarily of what the structure was. I was just trying to write good songs.
Yeah, and then it just kind of ended up happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of subconsciously. Wow. Well, the first one you put out was is It Comes From You, or Comes For You. Like, what was that song about? Like, tell me, and where did that song come in the writing process?
Yeah, so that song started very early, actually. I recently, I have a newsletter every Sunday called Taali Talk. And whenever a song comes out, I write out, you know, I find all the old demos so you can like read the whole.
Oh, cool.
It's really cool. Yeah. And this one was fun because I realized that it actually, so it came from a demo that I was playing on piano in Washington Heights. And then when we went from that 500 to 20 to 12, I went basically and I took that piano and it turned into a Juno, like a Juno synth line. And that's all we had for a while, but the line was so strong that obviously it had to go on the album, but I had no idea what to do with it, but I loved it and it didn't fit at all. You'll hear with the rest of the album, it's like much darker and more metal than the rest of this pretty songwritery album.
Okay.
And so at the time I was living in Amsterdam in 2021, it was fully locked down. Everything was great, Adam. We had a big bay window. We had a huge, gorgeous apartment. You know, we were biking to the cheese store and sitting on canals eating croissants. And I still couldn't shake the panic and visceral trauma of 2020 New York City. And I kept thinking to myself that, you know, it comes like lightning. That's why I kept thinking, it's just, if there's no rhyme or reason to it, and it just hits me and I'm right back there. And so that is, and then at some point it connected to me that this synth line that I had written could be the sonic representation of that returning trauma. And then the verses came really quickly to write about, you know, it comes in phases and stops and starts. Like I can write about that pretty simply. And then the synth line became a wordless chorus.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then how long are you living in Amsterdam before you move back to the States?
We lived in Amsterdam from January 2021 to June of 2022. So a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah. We were artists in residence at the Conservatorium van Amsterdam. So Jose taught singing and I taught music business and songwriting.
Very cool. Was that a pretty amazing experience?
Yeah, it was really special. And I am eternally grateful for that soft place to land and cry and process and write this, you know, because I needed so much silence and peace that I don't think I could have found anywhere other than Amsterdam, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, to be in the thick of that in New York, I can't even imagine. Especially since you're from there, but you know the city, you know where you're at, and it wasn't like you had just moved there a year and a half ago or something, and
No.
that's your place, or your where you're from, and to see that happening around you, I can't even imagine what that's like.
Yeah, it was very heavy. But I will say, as I said earlier, there's not one song, there's only one song on this album that even remotely directly references it, and it's a barely for me as Taali. It's like no one would know if I didn't tell them
Mhm.
that it came out of that, which is a goal of mine. I think COVID albums are wonderful and worthwhile, and they also, to me, feel so
Dated.
yeah,
Time
I don't want to be
stamped.
insulting.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's wild because you'll still even see, like, now if I see like a TV show or a movie coming out that's referencing it, I'm like, okay, like
Nobody,
we've already been there. I mean, not that it's not already still happening and it's tragic, but it's like I think people just want to get past
yeah,
it now. You know what I
and
mean?
exactly. And I think, all of the artists that I love the most broaden their experience so that people 30 years from now can listen to it. And that was my goal. So I was really more going for the themes of what I learned. There's not a mention of a mask or 6 feet distancing or any of
Right.
it anywhere on this album.
Yeah, that got corny real quick.
Yeah, I try not to.
Well, that's good. Well, congratulations on the album and the record label in 5 years. I mean, that's really, really special. And I appreciate you doing this today. Thank you so much, Taali.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I have one more question for you. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Ooh. Well, you'll have to hear first my caveat,
Okay,
which
go
is
for
that
it.
I don't think that any advice is gospel at all. And so take what I have to say or leave it. But one of the things that there are two things that I like to tell young artists, you say aspiring artists.
Aspiring artists, yeah. Anyone that wants to kind of get to where you are, or just
Yeah.
anyone that's trying to do something in the industry.
The first is that any unsolicited advice you should look at with caution. And I think any advice that you receive, you should look at the artist that's giving it to you. Look at their life, their career, and say, do I want that? If you do, then that advice holds some water. If you don't, that advice holds almost no water. That is a huge one that I wish I had considered earlier on. And the second is to hold strongly on to the thing you love the most and hold it in a part of you that nobody can take. So you and I discussed that. 8-year-old Talia singing at the Hero play, those moments. The first time I wrote for Jose, I hold those in a very key place because music is beautiful and the music business has the word business in it for a reason. And so I think it's really important to hold on to that joy in a place that is really, as much as one can do, untouchable, because there will be enough challenges to throw you off that axis easily if it isn't.